What's up, Epic 7 players? The latest and greatest hero has been released. I finally got her to level 60 and tested her out, and the community has got a feel for her too by now, so it is time for another review. Welcome to my guide for Vivian. Vivian is a mutated freak that not only isn't ice, despite obviously being a blue mage planeswalker, but she also has 3 heads. 2 without any hair or facial features, while also being kinda soft and fluffy like marshmallows. Also, upon further examination, that opening on her dress that the entire world freaked out about, actually, if you follow along the crack, it goes down her entire body. And what that reveals right around here is that she doesn't wear pantsu. So I know you might be thinking, who's the pervert, right? Me or the devs? And the answer is Vivian. Moving on to stats, this City Lord, has a DPS's dream stats, great speed, great attack, and even some crit chance. Her biggest weakness, however, is her health. So she's squishy, like marshmallows. If any non-water DPS so much as breathes on her, she's dead. So that kind of limits down her potential for builds, but it's not too much a problem as she's gonna be one to build that way anyways. Before that though, let's quickly go over skills. Skill 1. Attacks a single enemy, increasing her CR by 10%, adding an extra 10 if you crit. So with Max Mola investment, she'll gain 25% CR from her S1. Pretty simple. Skill 2. Attacks all enemies, triggering multiple times, up to 3 times, for each enemy killed during each trigger. So if we kill one enemy the first activation, it'll activate again, and if we kill someone again, it'll activate once more, and that is it. The 2 following triggers will deal less damage than the last, however you gain all of this on a measly 2-turn cooldown, which is pretty insane, making her a pretty decent cleaver and farmer, but more importantly, a good raid unit. Me like. And lastly, skill 3. Gives everyone a 3-turn attack and immunity buff, while also giving herself attack greater for 3 turns as well. This is by far her main appeal, as the only 3-turn attack buffers in the game currently are DN, a limited, and Meg Chloe, an ML5. So obviously not easy to get. So this is mostly what you'd be summoning her for, and 3-turn immunity is also handy in any content preventing debuffs. It does come at the cost of having a long 5-turn cooldown after Mola investment, but she can play around that cost because she's a mage. So that wraps up her skill set. For skill ups, I'd go S3 first, then S2, and then S1 last. The 5% CR is not that important, whereas the damage for the S2 is needed to trigger the Cascading Thunder Gods, so I get that before touching S1. Overall, nothing too OP, but definitely a handy kit that's very worth it for people without DNA. Before moving on to builds, Vivi is a Sagittarius, so these are the best places to farm for her catalyst. Don't forget the epics can be crafted in Alchemist Steeple if you needed to. Alright, you know it, you love it, you want it, it's time for builds. The consensus seems pretty standard, so this will be an easy 2 options depending where you want to use her in. Heavy PvE usage, or PvE with some function in PvP. So starting off with the easier PvE option is the heavy damage route. That is fairly slow, thick damage to trigger her S2 often, more than worrying about buffing your team immediately. This option is great for Azymatic Hunt and Raid, destroying the eggs and mobs easily each use of her S2, as well as making her a decent farmer. Try to get 95 or higher crit chance, high attack and crit damage, and you're set. Also, consider Lifesteal set with damage stats, so not the one from Abyss, as we all know it rolls mainly into health and effectiveness, effectiveness being useless on her. I'm saying that because with lifesteal and her damage, she should suck back a good amount of life to keep her alive, which she kinda struggles to do, especially when I tested her at level 50. Level 60 is so-so still, but survivable for the most part given your healer can sustain her whenever she gets low. But lifesteal is the safer option, but again, use a better set than the one from Abyss if you go that route. Stay above 130 speed if you want to outspeed mobs in raid, and generally adventure content as well. For artifacts, Time Matter is the best one here. After killing someone with the S2, it'll increase the damage of the next cascade and lower all her cooldowns by 1 turn if she kills, triggering once per cascade as it's treated as a separate skill activation. So what this means is that you can spam her S2 every single turn and lower her S3 by up to 4 turns given you kill someone with it every separate single cascade. 3 turns from the cascade Time Matter procs and 1 turn from just wasting a turn. This artifact is less useful against most of the raid bosses, but it's certainly great for the in-between mobs, and obviously as a mana cunt and farming it'll be easy to wipe them out. Alternatively, use Portrait of Saviors or Tonfa to ensure you kill mobs the first wave of her S2. Second build is a speedier version that attempts to go before your team to buff them first, but you also want good overall damage too. I've said it prior and after release, she is not a hard dizzy counter, so making her super speed is not worth losing the damage potential she could have in PvE, especially when she's the same speed as Dizzy, thus you're leaving it up to RNG to see who goes first. Unless you have the super speed gear to do that, and I mean 250 plus speed, don't do that. Overall, she's just decent in PvP and should be treated more like Diana. If you want to counter Dizzy, use Immunity Set or a Cleanser. With that said, she needs to go before your team, so around 190 to 210ish is the most you would generally go for, depending how slow your other units are. This build will also be better against bosses since she'll cycle turns more quickly, upkeeping her S3 more often than the damage one. So this is more support DPS than plain DPS like the first build. Besides speed, I'd say crit chance is most important to reach 100%, so you likely need a crit chance Ami, and the rest goes into damage. For artifact choices, since she lacks that super big punchy S2 damage like the first build, Etika's Scepter is the better option here to ensure she lowers her cooldowns often to have it up more frequently, potentially back-to-back S3 before the buffs wear off. So I think as a buffer role, that's her best artifact. However, mages have the most broken artifacts, so you can even go Lele Violin for constant strip and as a mana cunt, Siroren for debuff hell, Abyssal Crown for stun hell, etc, etc. I would say this build is the stronger build for Banshee to enable one-shot teams since her faster speed will buff your AoEer to clear the first wave, and won't deal as much damage to Banshee, so your slower one-shot DPS like Yufine or Baiken can more easily and consistently one-shot her. So those are the builds. I talked heavily about raid, so here are her most prominent raid morale teams to use her with Angelica and Tamarine options. And that wraps up the guide. She's a solid unit for most people, but still think she lacks the greatness to be worth the 120 pity summon. And with Anniversary around the corner, we might be getting something really good, so be cautious on bookmark or skystone spending. With many grass units getting buffs next week, it looks like water can be in for some trouble. Unfortunately though, for them, raid still predominantly benefits fire and water units, so those would be the go-to over grass. But what do you guys think of Vivian? How are you using her and what are your builds? Sound off in the comments below, rock smash that like button if you want more guides like this in the future, and subscribe for more Epic 7 epicness.